do it right now because I found it. I just have to be like looking like this. Y'all are watching me look so silly. So welcome today. I am Elisa Lambert, and we are being joined today by Danita Pitts, and I feel so privileged because she is so busy these days that she actually had time to sit down with us. We are representing the Division of Elementary and Secondary Education, and we have a vision that we want that Arkansas to lead the nation in student-focused, inclusive education. And also the mission that the Division of Elementary and Secondary Education provides leadership, support, and service to schools, districts, and communities, so every student graduates prepared for college, career, and community engagement. The desired outcomes for Arkansas is that all students will be considered general education students. And what that means for us as special educators, it means that when we walk into your classroom to observe and to help provide targeted instruction, we don't just see that child in that classroom as our child. We see the other students in your classroom that may have similar or have some deficits that they need to be working on that did not qualify for special education. So when I walk into a classroom as a teacher to be bringing service to your students in your classroom, all of your students become my students. Just as every time there's a student that comes into your classroom who has an IEP, that is an individual education plan. It is not I escape to down the hall plan. It is a plan that they're going to be taught in your classroom to the extent that it is appropriate for them to be there. And also the other outcome is that general education and special education will not operate as two separate systems. Instead, schools will operate as one system that works collaboratively to provide the supports needed to produce students who are ready for college, careers, and community engagement. And before we begin, you're not going to have to do this because there's no, Danita and I are the only SPED people in here, I believe, looking at the list. So whenever we do get to the breakout room activity, if you cannot unmute to speak, you can definitely type in your responses. That will be perfectly fine. And we are also going to have a Jamboard so that you might be able, that you could use that to communicate. And if attendance is recorded on Zoom chat, please sign in with your name and PDR number. If your name is different in PDR, it does help if you use the name that you are signed up in PDR with. Everyone who is watching must sign in. So here we are. This is team planning, instruction, and data collection. An intervention cannot be called an intervention if it is not progress monitored. An intervention without progress monitoring is just an activity. And that is a quote by Robert Meehan. When you think about data, what comes to your mind? And if you would type that in the chat, that would be nice. I'm getting my stuff set up here. Oops, y'all just saw where I moved that chat up to, didn't you?
Sorry, my allergies. We have several people saying information.
Yes, and that is true. I mean, it gives us the information that we need to see if what we are doing is bringing about the results that are expected. And data collection can sometimes be very overwhelming when we hear it said, but what we would hope is that by the end of today, you're going to see that we're not asking, or that special education really does not ask for anything more than what you are doing already in your classroom. We just may need you to look at a child within a different way. And so that you would collect data about maybe they're in a center playing, and the what the goal says is that they will provide or perform with one prompt. And that would be what you would do is, did it take one prompt, or did it take more, or did they not perform? And it's just a data of talking about the amount of prompts or the level of prompting needed. And so we're going to get into that, and it's going to be a lot of fun. I just know it is. So every day, all day, we see data, and it drives those decisions on how we teach our children. But really, what good is the data if it's not recorded with fidelity? And all those who are collecting the data must understand what the child is expected to accomplish. If we do not have functional, measurable goals, our data will really be meaningless. But data is not a one-person responsibility. The early childhood special ed providers have responsibility to support you in the classroom. So we're going to talk about how we create and share meaningful functional goals. That's not a one-person job either. That is a team job. Support classroom planning practice is that the practice is set across all settings. It's not something that we do in the corner of the room and call it inclusion because we were in the room sitting in the corner having a child stand on one foot because that was a deficit. And also, it is about building competence and confidence for everyone to collect data with fidelity, for the classroom instructors to understand and to be able to help us by collecting data so that we can watch for trends, watch for progress, or if we need to come back and maybe back up a little bit. The process of data-based decision-making, it is a cyclical one. It addresses the effectiveness of instruction in supporting a student to learn and to be able to perform in their classroom and be ready to go to kindergarten. As a team, we write functional goals and we provide that instruction in the way that it is written. And then we collect that data. As we look and review the data, we have questions to ask. Is it working? Are they making the progress that we expect? Do we need to come back and modify the way we're teaching it? And it is a cyclical process. So today's learning objectives are going to be, what are functional goals? Goals that address the skills and activities needed for functional independence are functional goals. Functional goals are not isolated. They are woven into the child's daily life and activities. And how do we provide children with the opportunity to practice functional goals? Well, one of the ways to begin is to list the goals that you want to embed. Some things, like when you're teaching, if it's a speech path child and they have articulation goals, the speech path may pull that child out to teach sounds. But when they come back into the classroom, they may have an embedded goal that they will practice using whatever the sound is when they speak with adults. And so that would be embedded across their day, that the teacher would be listening for them to use those sounds. They are integrated into daily routines and activities by utilizing that method that we talked about earlier, the routines to the third. And then driving future decision with data and not feelings. Boy, have my feelings surprised me before whenever I was just guessing what a child had progressed. And then whenever I actually took the data, it was not nearly the increase that I had thought. But had I not utilize my data to make decisions about how I was instructing the child, I would have had a disservice to him, because my feelings were that he was doing really, really well. And so that's why we've got to think about things that are solid, like data, not feelings. Collecting daily data allows the team to continually assess the impact of instruction and make decisions about strategies to implement.
Lisa, do you mind if I hijack and give an
Yes,
example?
please do.
Well, I'm just thinking, sorry, my allergies today are so bad.
It's okay.
I had a student here in Little Rock in a preschool program, and I was the early childhood special education teacher. And then there was a speech language pathologist who was working with this same child. I saw the child in the classroom full time. Like, I went in, if the child went out to recess while I was there, or wherever the child was, I saw them in live action, interacting in the classroom the way probably most of you are seeing them every day. The SLP was pulling the child out to do the articulation services. Child was doing fantastic, apparently, one-on-one with the SLP, watching the facial expressions, looking straight in the face, getting prompted, put her back in the classroom, and she was never correctly even using the sound. She wasn't even attempting to make it. And so when we started putting all of that together and having true collaborative conversations between the teacher, myself, and the SLP, we realized that need and that importance for some of that classroom modeling, so that myself and the classroom teacher could prompt the child to use the correct sound. Because otherwise, they were getting practice when the SLP was there and no other time during the week, because there wasn't even the opportunity to correct, because she wasn't attempting to use it.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why this becomes so important, and why that collaboration and conversation from you guys especially becomes so valuable
Mm-hmm.
to actually correctly getting the results that we're wanting. Sorry, Lisa.
No, that is not, I mean, that is so important, because that is what we can miss if we are not talking to each other. And that is one of the things that I really hope that before I retire, that every general education preschool teacher that I have come into contact with knows that their input and your knowledge of that child is just as important as any evaluation scores that we've ever done. More so because you know whether a child is actually performing in the classroom or not. And that, I mean, I just thank you, Danita. That was very, very timely and on point. Is there any question at this point? Okay. So we're going to talk about goals. We're going to talk about how we create and share meaningful functional goals. Do you contribute to the IEP goal writing process? Because the classroom teacher is the one who has the information about what the child needs to be successful in the classroom. The family knows what they need, what is needed to be successful. The SPED teacher, the related service providers have tools and experience to talk about what a child needs. But unless we are all working together as the whole team, we're really not going to be able to create meaningful functional goals. So let's look at a goal and find a way to make it measurable and practiced in the general education setting in multiple centers. I'm going to talk about what a goal is. Functional goals are real life. They are complex, and the way skills are really used. They're in connection with one another, how they fit together. And while we may need to pull a functional goal apart to teach specific components to children, We must realize that in order to be truly functional, they've got to be put back together in real life daily activities in order to be that useful result for the child. And then we teach them to use this skill in real life situations. This is called generalization. And this is what having children served inside the classroom allows us to do in a much proficient manner, and it supports the children. It does allow for that slow, supported generalization. So, Amanda, I see that sometimes you get asked questions from a questionnaire, but otherwise the therapist take care of it. That's not untypical, but if there is ever anything that you specifically know or want to have input in, please speak up.
So
So,
I was just going to say, so um, the purpose of having an IEP ultimately is to help these children access their education.
mhm,
Their education is you, that teacher who's in the room with them every day and what you're doing.
mhm,
So if the collaboration works well, and if the staff knows that you are open and want to be a part of that process, you can work together to create goals that, instead of, like Elisa said earlier perfectly, it's a deficit, just something the child can't do. Are you really working on goals that are supporting what you need that child to be able to do every day in that classroom, to be a part of the group and to be successful? There's no use working on a goal that is not going to help that child in your program. So if that communication there and that trust is built between you and that SPED teacher, you can write goals that are truly effective and not
mhm.
just filling a gap that child may have missed, but is it something that's really useful every day?
Exactly. Exactly. So, I'm on a call. Here today. Okay. I'm sorry, y'all. Uh, we're going to go now to defining the high quality participation based IEP goals. They are goals that promote age appropriate activities to address academic and functional areas. They're goals that describes a situation where it will be demonstrated, but it does not name a place or educational environment. The goal is observable and measurable. It describes how the child demonstrates what they know or can do. It is positively stated, and a goal is jargon free. A family might be at the table and say, I want my child to talk more so he is better understood by others. Y'all, is that an age appropriate expectation? Yeah. And in what situations is more observable and measurable? Can we write that to where it's jargon free? Is it positive? Yeah, that was a positive statement, and it was a statement that was jargon free. But does it describe how the child demonstrates the skill? No. So we're going to think about the parent's request and that this is a skill that needs to be addressed on the child's IEP. This is a team, an IEP team decision. Y'all, this is what I just want everyone to always know. This is a team decision. IEPs are not done alone. It requires everyone who has knowledge of the child to put some input on it as the IEP team. So the IEP team does agree that this is a functional skill that will be addressed in the child's IEP. And the question would be, how could that goal be written so that it meets the information that is on this slide? Well, this is a CDELS, is Child Development Early Learning Standards. It's addressed in LD 2.1. about being able to be understood. So this is the way I wrote this goal so that it answered these questions. When asked what he wants or needs, Pete will use words and phrases, including refusals, to express what he wants 5 out of 5 times throughout daily routines and activities for 5 consecutive days by the end of the 2025 school year. Is this a goal that as a classroom staff member that you could easily monitor or know whether or not he is meeting any part of this goal? This is the kind of goal that could be embedded in any part of the classroom day. This is why it's important for our teachers to know what the IEP says and what the expectations and what those goals are. So there are a few things to consider when writing measurable goals for preschool age children. One is the time frame. When will the goal be completed? Second is the condition. How is the skill presented? Then we have the behavior. What is going to be observed? And that criterion is how will mastery of the goal be measured? We have to know when a child has arrived to the point that they have mastered a goal. There has to be some criterion there to measure it. That time frame ensures that we understand when the goal is to be completed. It provides that endpoint. It's often written as by the end of the IEP period, by the end of the first semester, by the end of the 2025 school year. A goal must state the conditions under which that skill is going to be presented. This ensures that each person working on the goal is presenting it in the exact same way. You will hear some special ed teachers talk about the given. That is the condition, because they're referring to what the child is given in order to practice the skill so that we can see if they're making the mastery. So here are some examples. Using a picture schedule when given 2 choices independently, given a model of a specific alternative response. I mean, these are things that we could do. Now that one's kind of wordy. I don't really like that one. I need to move it. But given a choice, these are things that we can see. A condition is not when given instruction. Hopefully, every child every day is getting instruction. What we want to know is what a child needs that is unique for that particular child for us to be able to observe the behavior that we can measure. So that's the condition.
And it really looks at the level of support that the child
Mhm.
needs. So can they do it independently? Do they get a verbal prompt? Do they get a physical prompt? Do they need a marker instead of a pencil when they're writing because of the size of the grip?
Mhm.
Do they need a piece of construction paper taped to the table when they're writing?
Right.
Things of that nature that are extra, that child might just need an extra level of support. And you want to make sure that's clearly outlined, that you in the class aren't expecting them to do it independently while the SLP or the teacher in the classroom are having them do it with a lot of support in place. So it's to clarify.
And Danita, this brings to mind something that I had not thought about for a very long time. one of the things that a child that I had inherited whenever I had not been a part of the goal writing process for this child, but it was for him to be able, had a lot of hand motor problems, but to be able to turn the pages in a board book. Well, they did not put on that condition that a board book with additional supports to turn the page, like taping a tab, so that they could use that to turn the page. Well, because the condition was not complete, what I measured was not the same thing that his previous teacher had been measuring, And so I was just very confused. Why did he go so far down in being able to turn individual pages? Well, that was why. So it's very important that the goal be presented the same way every time, or the data is not good. Because he was sitting right here, and then when I had him, he went down, and it's like, oh, that what was going on. And when I talked to his previous teacher, that was what it was, is that was not in there. Okay, so now we want to think about the behavior. It has to clearly state the behavior, because that is what we can see. It may be something like sort like items, remain seated at the eating location, sustain sitting in a chair, select a correct item when presented with 4 options. It has to be something that we can see and count. It has to be observable. And the last one is that criteria. It has to have that criterion, because that defines when the goal is met. It answers that question, how will mastery be measured? It can be based on rate, time, percentage, or even a descriptive statement. Some examples include 3 of 4 trials over 5 consecutive weeks, 8 of 10 observations, 4 of 5 opportunities with 80% accuracy, 70% accuracy on 4 out of 5 trials over 8 weeks. You will see some goals that have 100% accuracy. There are some things that we need to be able to do correctly every time we attempt it. And so that is why you would see those. Is there any question here? Have y'all seen goals that had these lines of statements in there, and you're like, what exactly are they talking about here? And again, always know that you can approach your early childhood special education teacher who comes to your center with questions, and they should be able to find you answers as you move forward. Measurable goals have considerations that we have to take. It is not a list of assessment items. It's not a copy and paste of CDLs. They are based on academic and functional needs. Measurable goals are determined by the team. They should never be a drop down from a box, because one size does not fit all. Goals should be individualized for each child. So this is where the breakout room comes. And since we're all so small, I think we all can just work in the big room. What do you think, Danita? Yeah, definitely. Definitely. So we're going to I've got a list of statements. And I want you to think about these things. What do we want for early childhood children? We want engagement, which is their participation. We want them to have that sense of belonging and build friendships. And also, we want to build independence for them, help them be able to do for oneself. And sometimes that independence statement really does require a modification or an accommodation or an alternative equipment choice. So think about, as we're going over these, we're going to be thinking about where the skill can be practiced in the pre-K daily activity, how this skill might be presented, and how will we know if that skill has been mastered. So we've got here, we're going to think about what the function of the goal, the time frame, condition, behavior, and criterion. These are the goals. This is a goal with a justification example. During interactions with peers or adults, Jayla will make verbal requests for materials or toys with no more than 2 verbal prompts for 5 consecutive days by the end of the 24-25 school year. Well, as we are thinking about this justification for this goal, let's think about Jayla specifically. She uses other often misunderstood methods to communicate her wants. It might be continually hitting the teacher, grabbing her shirt tail and pulling her, grunting, hitting. All kinds of things could be going on, but she has been working on initiating verbal request with her speech path. And the speech path is at the meeting, and she says, I really, really want to see Jayla initiating these verbal requests throughout the day. So the question would be, is that age appropriate? Is it developmentally appropriate? Is it a functional goal? Is it something that we can see and measure? Yes, that it fits all of those definitions. So we want to think about where we might watch for this goal and embed it. Because of the nature, this is really observable anywhere in the classroom, but we're specifically going to think about dramatic play. She really likes dramatic play, and she likes to play with her peers, but because she's not well practiced on the verbal request or making requests that are not seen as being aggressive, we're going to use that as a place where she will make that verbal request for an item she wants. Just writing that statement, is that going to be all we need to do is just tell her now you're going to make a verbal request? No, there's going to be a hierarchy of skill. Maybe it begins that when she pulls on my shirt, I will remind her verbally, Jayla, use your words to tell me what you want so I can help you. Those are the kind of things that it would be with a verbal prompt. You will know these things because the speech path will tell us what she expects that to be. And that could be added in, and it is in the goal. It is no more than 2 verbal prompts. So we know that that is what we're going to be doing. We may have to tell her 4 or 5 times before we get to the point where it's only taking 2 verbal prompts for her to make those verbal requests. Another place that we would want, that we think it's important to be watching, is outside with peers. She likes to play with the balls, and because she has that difficulty expressing what she wants or needs, she tends to go running after the balls that are runaway situation, and that can lead to some altercations with other children on the playground. So we want to watch there, that we want to have her ask her peer for a turn with the ball. We could teach those ways to make requests, and I've got some really good support in that. that how we can teach how to make requests. And in the classroom, Jayla is might be one of my grandchildren. She could stand in front of the art center looking for scissors and just not be able to find them. Come and get you and point and grunt, because that's been her habit for the last 4 years. And that so that we want her to come and ask you with that verbal request for materials that she cannot find. So that would be another way that you could see if she is actually making progress on her goal. It's also something that you can definitely measure. So a lot of times when we are thinking about embedded goals, we really want to think about what is the justification? Why do we want to see it in that situation? And it really does help when we start thinking about what the child prefers and where they need that extra support to be successful.
And a goal like this is so important because it's a two-prong approach. Really, by inserting this and by teaching this communication method of getting what you want, it's also an option then for replacing a negative behavior that you might be seeing causing trouble in your classroom. Elisa was nice with the tapping, but I mean, it very could be the child in the center every day who's snatching toys from
Yes.
others because they don't know how to do it correctly. So you're teaching this behavior, which is then can replace that negative behavior you're trying to get rid of.
And
Because if
Danita,
they can't do it that way, they have to have an alternative. So this one's kind of a nice dual prong goal that's going to get you multiple positive responses.
thank you, Danita. I appreciate that because I that was exactly what I was thinking about when I was writing these goals. I was thinking about ways that we teach a child in an inclusive setting, but we're not teaching in isolation. So there are other children who need to learn how to make requests without being seen as aggressive or inappropriate. So, and this is a great way to use peer modeling to teach things. So I really and truly hope that as we progress with our inclusionary practices in preschool classrooms, that when you have implemented pivotal practices for the whole class, you're building that solid foundation for everyone in your class to have the opportunity to be successful. And sometimes it does require accommodations, modifications, and accommodations. So now then, let's look at these breakout room. Do y'all have the CDLs available to you? Here is our Jamboard. Let me put that in here. I think oh. No, that's to Danita. I don't want it to go to her. I want it to go to everybody. There it was. Let's see. There you go. There is a Jamboard. And so we're going to talk about the functional goals. We're going to think about what is the function of the goal, what is the time frame, the condition, and the behavior, and we'll have our completed goal. But these are the things that I really want you to think about, is that how is it measured? Can it be observed in multiple areas and times during the preschool day? Is it stated positively? Is it age and developmentally appropriate? And do you know what the child is doing? Do you know what you're supposed to be seeing? And when will you know that that goal has been accomplished? And I don't know why there's a 7 there, because there shouldn't be. But these are the questions that you should be answering as we create the goal. Let me go back here. Okay, so what are y'all seeing right now? One of these days,
This slide.
okay. Okay. So let's see here. Here is the breakout room practice. I had 5 statements, and these are statements that we often hear, that a parent will say, I just want my child to play games, or he never comes when I call him, needs to share, complete self-help routines, and Marcus will make a choice. Every one of these has a corresponding CETLS. Good Lord, Danita, I've gone blank on what that's called, but the social emotional, what are those things called?
Domain?
Domain. There we go. The
I
domain.
wasn't
the
sure that's what
skills
you were looking for.
associated. That was the word I was looking for. The domain and the skills that are associated with them on that continuum timeline. So which one would y'all like to start working with? The link is not working. Okay, hang on. Let me see what I can figure out. Thought I shared.
If we're doing it together, you can just share it and write it for them, Elisa,
Okay.
since we're all in one group.
Okay, that sounds good. Now, when I did that, was that on y'all's screen? Are y'all seeing the Jamboard?
Yes.
Okay, so let's go back over here and let's pick, let's pick out our statement that we want to write a goal. I'm going to call on somebody's name. Patty Jackson. Cindy Jackson, I think maybe. Give me 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Let's see. Let's do Dre will come when he is called.
Okay.
Sorry.
All right. All righty. So then let's go up here. Okay, so we have the Jamboard. And so let's think about the, let me write this. Is this something that needs to be addressed? Is it age appropriate? So let's go over here and let's look. What was that what was that one? Let me go back and see here. Oh goodness, Dre will come when he is called. That is CD 2.3. So let's go see how that looks for him. That would be cognitive development on page 24, which I know I could go to 24 instead of making y'all dizzy. Close your eyes, girls. Close your eyes. Okay. It was 2.3, wasn't it?
0.3.
What was it?
CD 2.3.
Oh,
Yes.
CD 2.3.
Yes.
Good Lord. I'm losing my brain.
That's it.
There we go. Okay, so this is regulates impulses and behaviors. So the child is at least 36 months old because he's in our preschool. And so let's look at this. It shows increasing control over impulsive actions, words, and behaviors with adult support. He walks around instead of going through the mud puddle, avoids imitating negative behavior, and requests turns with toys, whether maybe that was not the one I had. Yeah, that was it. That was the one so that he's showing that increased control over impulsive actions. Because even though you don't think of not coming when you're called as being an impulsive action. It really is, because a lot of times children start going other ways when they're called. So we want them to have that regulation of those impulses and behaviors. But how can we support him to gain that skill? How can we support him to become whenever he's called to come? So what would be something that we could do as a condition? Why does that not work? I'll go back to the sticky pads. So let's think about, we're wanting Dre to come when he is called. So let's think about what a condition might be.
Well, I'm thinking about, level of scaffolding. So it's going to be much harder for him to come when called if he's in a large group of noisy children. So maybe when he's playing independently, or he's in the library center, somewhere quiet, but it's where his attention is not distracted, because you want to start where his attention is not distracted and build that habit first before trying it elsewhere.
Right. What if we call it a quiet center?
In a quiet center.
Yeah.
Much easier in reading center than blocks.
Definitely. Definitely. So let's save that as our condition. So we know that we're going to be able to, when Dre is playing independently in a quiet center, let's think about what is the behavior that we would want. Uh-oh, that's the wrong one. So what if we were to put a time condition? Because what if part of Dre's issue is that he's really not processing the request because he's busy looking at pictures. And he may hear you say, Dre, come with me so we can go wash your hands, or whatever you're calling him for. But it may take him a couple of seconds to process that he's been called. So what if we give him a
Are you wanting the action? I was
yeah,
saying,
let's do
I
the
almost would
behavior.
have him approach the teacher and make eye contact
Okay.
within, and I know this may sound short, but 30 seconds, but when you're sitting timing, is 30 seconds
It's
too
a
short?
long time, or it could be
I
short.
was gonna say it seems short, but when you're waiting on it, it sometimes
Yeah.
is longer. Is 30 seconds
I mean,
enough for most people to be comfortable with? They're all being quiet.
within
I would
30
say start with
seconds.
30 seconds.
30 seconds. Because
That would give him time to put something down that he had.
That's right.
And
to
approach.
complete something that he's doing even. "30 seconds of his name being called." So here we are. When Dre is playing independently in a quiet center, he will approach the teacher and make eye contact within 30 seconds of his name being called. So what all do we have here, Danita? Tell me what parts I've got.
You have your condition behind, and on this one, you have got your exact action that you're needing. Your
Okay,
behavior.
my behavior.
Behavior condition.
So now then, how are we going to know that he has the criteria to know that he's mastered the skill? Would that be within 30 seconds of his name being called?
Well, that's the action you're wanting him to do. But if you're wanting to know your condition for mastery, you would need to think about if he does it one time, is it mastered? Or are you wanting him to do it 4 of 5 times a day?
Yeah, let's think
Or
about that.
how many times in a row do you want him to do this for you to consider that a mastered skill?
Perfect. I was having a really big old brain block right there for a minute. So he will approach the teacher and make eye contact within 30 seconds of his name being called.
That's how you know he's done it. But how many times in a row or how many times a day do you expect to see that happen?
I would think that 3 out of 5 times or 4 out of 5 times for 2 consecutive weeks, really. I mean, that way you've got, or is that too much?
I think you're going to probably call it. Okay, so one of you, if you have a child that's having difficulty with this in your classroom, about how many times a day do you think you would call a child's name and expect them to come to you? 3 times, 5 times? I'm thinking lining up to go outside, maybe lining up for lunch would,
Like 6 to 10 times a day.
Okay.
Because actually you're calling them when they come in the door in the morning time, you're talking to them.
Mm-hmm.
When you line up to wash your hands,
Line up,
pottying, going to breakfast, going to lunch,
going outside, coming back from outside, you have to get them to line up. So say 6 to 10 maybe.
So if you're doing it that many times, though, you don't want to commit yourself to having to do it
count that many times.
a day. But let's say if you
Exactly.
pick 3 of those times a day or 4,
Yeah.
More than
that
one.
you're definitely going to watch that.
Yeah.
Yes.
So y'all tell me how to write it.
Let's see. Hang on.
So you're looking at how many times a day do you want him to do it? So you could say like
want
at least 3 times daily.
3 times a day.
Yes.
At least 3 times.
Okay.
Because they're going to do it more than that, they're saying.
Yeah.
So at least 3 times daily.
Okay. So now then, let's see. We need one more thing on here.
Let me add to that one.
Okay.
So you're wanting them to do it 3 times daily. If you're looking at length of time, because IEPs are technically written for a year.
Right.
You really don't want to work on this one goal all year. You'd rather come to a point where you say, okay, he's got this. So if he's doing it 3 times daily, how long of a period would you expect him to do that? If he does it 3 times daily for 2 weeks, would you consider that he's got this?
I think it just depends on the child. If he's not really, do you know if he's actually listening? Can he hear you?
Oh man, you said the magic words. Oh my gosh. It depends on the child.
Yes. But I would say a month myself. I would.
Okay. So,
Me too.
okay.
So 3 times daily for 1 month.
Yes. And then reevaluate it.
And
And
then
then you may have to add more.
Mm-hmm.
if it's not getting,
Right.
Correct.
Yeah.
And this is where that data piece becomes so important. He might be doing it 3 times daily for his
Mhm.
special ed teacher
Yes.
somewhere down the hallway, but when you've got him in class, he's not.
Not
So
doing
that's
it.
when that
Right.
data piece becomes so valuable when you start
Mhm.
comparing and they're saying, well, he's doing it for me. And you're like, but not here. And that's
Yes.
where you can really focus in and make sure that that generalization starts happening that you're wanting to see.
Yeah, because sometimes they're doing it for them and then not doing it for us too.
Correct.
And we're not seeing that, you know.
Correct.
That's
And
right.
until you guys see it,
Yeah.
it's not over.
It's not
That's
over.
the goal.
That
for you
is the
guys.
whole thing. I mean,
Yes.
because I mean, I can do a lot of things in isolation, but whenever I'm having to do it for other people, it's like, no, I've got to practice, you know. So, and it's the same way with our children. So, and if they're not doing it for you guys in the classroom, we're not serving them the way we need to be serving them. So that's true. So let's do that. And now then, because this is not something that we want to work on for a whole year, let's think about, we need to have
An endpoint.
an endpoint. That was the word I was looking for.
Yeah.
Could we say by the end of the first 9 weeks?
You could
Or
say by the end of the first 9 weeks of school, by the end of October. Because, you know, you would want to come back and address it at some point. If the
Yes.
child's not mastering it by October, we need to look at doing something different.
Right.
So it would kind of be by that first 9 weeks, or like I said, that's usually close to the end of October, like the 3rd week of October. So you could say by the end of October.
So there we are. And so here we do. Here we have the parent. This is what the parent really was wanting and concerned about. Dre will come when he is called. So the team has come up that when Dre is playing independently in a quiet center, he will approach the teacher and make eye contact within 30 seconds of his name being called 3 times daily for 1 month by the end of October 2024. And so this is how a goal is put together. I will tell y'all that whenever we do monitoring, and that is part of our duties as the Department of Education Office of Special Education, we monitor the folders and the paperwork of children with IEPs. And one of the things that we monitor is how a goal is built. Does it have the 4 functional goals? There is a piece here that that has not even come up, and that is the present level of academic achievement and performance. Is that right? Laugh.
Functional
Performance. That's it. I was like, that is not right. But we haven't talked about that. But in the PLAF, there would have to be a statement about his difficulty or where he is in coming when his name is called. Because if there is a goal, it has to be related back to something that he is stated in his present level.
And so this would be step 1. And your hope is that he would master this fairly quickly. And then you would come back and look at that next step. So you don't just always want him doing it when it's in a quiet center. If he's out on the playground and headed for the street, you want him to come to you when his name is called. So you would, you know, the next step would be to do it any time of day, or doing it even during noisy situations.
Yes.
So that safety piece is covered there.
Yes.
Alisa, how long did this run? I just wanted to do a time check. It's
1:30.
Okay.
In 1:30.
Just FYI.
Yeah. And so, and we are pretty close to the end here, I'm thinking. But so does this help, or does this confuse the goal writing process for y'all?
And we hope it helps you understand that process so you can give input.
Yes.
You're the one who sees this child all day, every day. So when it comes to looking at that condition, you're going to know better if this child is to the point where they can do it in a noisy situation, or if you need to back up to this point and say, okay, let's start out when it's quiet, because if we try to do it in a noisy situation, it's not going to happen right now.
Right.
And helping to do that behavior. Like, what do you expect when you call their name? Do you want them to physically come to you like we have here? Or do you just expect the child to turn their head and look at you? So you kind of can help write that as to what your classroom expectation for that would be.
Yes.
And that way, when they're teaching it and working on it and reinforcing it, they're doing what you expect every day. And so that behavior ends up being what you want to see in class.
And that's why you guys are so important in this whole process. You're not just a signature on a line or filling out paperwork on a questionnaire. It's so much more. So, do y'all want to work on another one? I think that we will go on so that we can get into talking about the data collection, because that piece becomes very important. I will tell you that one of the things that we're really working on is finding a way to integrate what we want children to be measured, how we want them to be measured with what you are doing with your work sampling. Because a lot of the things that you do in work sampling is exactly this kind of interaction with children, or showing what skills they can do. And I mean, it becomes, isn't it much more usable when we're all talking the same language, or when we're all looking at the same thing, because we don't ever want you to feel like that what we're bringing to you is adding to you. What we want to bring to you is something that supports you every day in your classroom, because you have look at me, I just said it. You have students with varying degrees of abilities and disabilities and abilities in your classroom, and they're there all the time. And so what we would hope is that what we bring to the table is a way to support what you're already doing to help all students be successful. So now then, that data process, that embedded opportunities, how can support be offered across the classroom setting? Do we always need to pre-plan to make sure that there are preferred items and centers or areas where we want to see a child practice a skill? This is where that conversation between the classroom teacher and the SPED teacher or the related service personnel begins to set or maybe salt the classroom with opportunities. I had a child who had significant delays and disabilities. She had physical disabilities and just all kinds of things that made her life need a lot of support and help. She would work and do anything for Pete the cat. And so whenever I would want her to be working in a place other than her preferred center, I would make sure that I brought some little Pete's and set in the classroom so that when she went to these different centers, she would find him. And we were able to expand her opportunities to interact with her peers, because she just wasn't sitting over where the puppets were and she was playing with Pete. I had those tools, and the classroom teacher was open to me bringing them in. They were not just for that student with the IEP to play with. They were for everyone in the classroom. And that is where inclusion comes. It's like, it is not that we're doing something different for a subset of children. we are presenting them with the same opportunities. The only thing that might be different is that we are supporting them in the way that it is presented. So let's think about this as we're planning for supports across the classroom. We want to find what a child prefers, so that encourages that participation. And it's not just a toy or a preferred center. We have to think about assistive technology. Does a child need an augmented communication device? Do they need big buttons to make a choice? There are all kinds of things. So assistive technology devices and services can be used for infants, toddlers, children, and youth with disabilities. And these are required to be thought about in IDEA, both parts C and B. And the use of these assistive technology devices and services is critically important for many children with disabilities, as it can greatly improve their educational experience, improve their educational and post-school outcomes, and help develop important skills and abilities. If a child requires assistive technology or the services, they have to be available, accessible, and appropriate for the children with disabilities and their families. And we all have a role to play. We have a role here at the State Department, the special ed department who service you, they have a role, and you as a classroom teacher have a role. That if a child has an assistive technology device, and that is to be used not just when the special education teacher comes in the classroom. It is something that should be used that they should have available and accessible so that they can be successful in their classroom. Supports are individualized. We use visuals that promote engagement and independence. If a child needs to have a personal schedule, we give that to them. We use assistive technology. We have a prompting hierarchy, and we want to be able to share that, the special ed and the classroom teacher and the related services, what that prompting hierarchy looks like. And we sometimes have to use those extrinsic reinforcers. When we come and we use this, we want to always be working toward the time that this child does it just because it is something that they're being asked to do, and they're not being reinforced by some kind of preferred activity or item. The support is environmental. Distractions minimized. Sit down on your circle time rug and look at where you sit and see what the children are seeing. Is there so much there that you can't even really pick out what you're wanting to have attention drawn to? Make sure that the distractions in the classroom, whether it is visual or sometimes it can be there can just be too much decoration. Make sure that the things that you have on your wall have a reason to be there. Is your classroom accessible for all children? If you have a child who has a standing device, is your art table at a height that they can stand and participate? Can they get their wheelchair up to the table? Is it accessible for all children? And the organization of your classroom should make sense. And we know that we want to have our quiet centers away from our noisy centers. But this is talking about, do your transitions make sense? Or are you making 3 transitions to do 1 change? Think about how your organization of your day, how everything is laid out for your children and the materials. we want to provide what the child requires to be able to use the materials in the classroom. Does your child have some grip? Is there a child that needs big paintbrushes? Or maybe a writing grip? Do they need to have like the tabs on the book so that they can actually turn the pages of the book and do those pre-literacy skills? So while the inclusion lens causes us to see the child generalizing skills and participation across all settings, and we provide opportunities across all settings, we want to make sure that our data is being collected with fidelity. And I know that I use the word fidelity all the time, but this is the reality. We really are only as good as our data. If we have good data, we know we are teaching to extend growth. We expect that all children can and do learn. And we believe that we can make a positive difference in every child's education. And this is what we do. We have that direct hand on the leaders of tomorrow. Ladies, don't ever, ever forget that teaching is a noble profession and what you do is important. And I thank you for coming back day after day because our kids need us. They need you. So, what are we going to do with our data? With this, we want to build competence and confidence of all providers to collect data with fidelity. Once again, that data drives the decisions in how we teach all children, not just children with IEPs. If we do not have functional, measurable goals, our data will really be meaningless. But data is not that one person responsibility. The early childhood special education providers and related service providers have a responsibility to support you in the classroom by showing you and teaching you what their expectations are when you're making those measurements. So, do we put the clipboard in the classroom and expect everyone to understand how the goal is observed and measured? No, we are here wanting to build that competence and confidence of all providers to collect data with fidelity. This is how a data collection sheet can look. We are in the process of making Arkansas's our own. This looks very complicated and scary, but it's really not. This is the rationale that this teacher and the team had about how they wanted to collect the data for this child named Aspen. And you see that the intent of this data collection is to track her need for adult assistance to perform the skill in each objective across the daily routines. The teacher thought about making it more general, specifically tracking how often she requires assistance with remembering how to use both hands. However, the goal was not to bring attention to the weaker side, but to encourage her to use both arms, hands in different ways across various routines. So they felt like tracking in these different areas will allow us to see the strengths so that we can build on those and also see what supports work best. And she also makes this statement: this should also enable me to see if these interventions are working or not in specific routines, or if we've got to step back in that review situation and change the strategy. Here are at the bottom is the key. These are prompting keys. She will perform with no adult intervention is a 4. Verbally directs child is a 3. Partial physical assistance is a 2. That hand over hand, 100% physical assistance is a 1. And there are days that children refuse to do it, walk away, or just say no. And that would be that 0. Or it could be a no data, you just didn't see it that day. You just didn't see it in that setting. So in dramatic play, Aspen will alternate using the weaker side to manipulate the toys with the stronger side while holding a baby doll. So you would really want to see her holding the baby doll in her strong side and using the bottle with her weaker side. That might be something that you're wanting to do. Or are you wanting to see her? And if you see that alternating and manipulating those toys, that's what you would be looking for. Or did you need to remind her, oh, remember, we want to work with both hands. So sand and water, we'll use one hand to stabilize a bucket and the other to scoop sand or water with sand and water toys. This is something that we can definitely see, and we can count. We can see what level of prompting or help did she need. In the art center, use one hand to stabilize paper and the other to practice cutting with scissors. So that is, are we doing it hand over hand, or is she actually being able to do it with some independence? And again, this center does family style snacks where they pour their own water, and she would use one hand to stabilize a cup and pour water from a pitcher. These are all functional skills that are addressing the weak side of her body in a positive way, so the attention is not being drawn to what she cannot do, but it's supporting her to do the things and to grow stronger on that weak side. Is there any question about that? And like I said, when we're talking about how we're going to see this evidence, if you're sitting at the IEP at the table with the IEP team, and we're talking about how we're going to know see the evidence of this skill, you can say, you know what, this is something that I'm doing for work sampling, and where you could integrate and bring these together. That's why your input is so important. It's very important. Progress monitoring of targeted individual goals. We want to establish that team-based system for effective data collection. All team members participate in daily data collection. We want to build that competence and confidence of all providers. We want to embed those IEP goals into daily routines. Data is taken within daily routines, not in isolation. And we clearly define routines to the third, as we've learned in our routines to the third training in the back. We want, or prior that we've done in the back. We want to utilize the knowledge, and we want you to utilize the knowledge that your early childhood special education and related service providers have to support you in your classroom planning. Instruction and opportunity for practice is delivered across activities, adults, and settings, but we do not collect data on a trial by trial basis. Instead, each objective only gets one data point or activity per day in that setting. So you wouldn't like go back and count or see what she's doing in dramatic play 3 or 4 times that day. You would, when you saw her, you would just take that one data point for a day. The only way that we can collect good data is that we want to make sure that progress monitoring is that key component for any child's instructional programming for 2 primary reasons. First, we need to document and show the individual child's progress over time related to those individual IEP goals. And second, collecting daily data will allow team members to access the impact of daily instruction. So we know that children are being exposed to instruction all day, every day in your classrooms. It's not just that time that the early childhood special ed teacher comes. That is not the only time. And so I hope that you can see that the supporting children with their IEP goals and doing it in an inclusive manner is not just special ed, it's not just general education, but it is us working together with one goal in sight, and that is the success of the children. You guys are always collecting and complete continuous assessments for progress. And that's the exact same thing that we're doing, specifically looking at the goals that a child with an IEP has. Are there any questions? Is there any comment? Is there something y'all just want to say and let us know? I will cut that out of if it's something, I'll cut the recording off before I post it if y'all do. I promise I won't put you out. I won't air you out. Are you feeling more comfortable when you hear the word inclusive practices or inclusion? Thank you, Cindy. It's scary. I mean, when we're talking about new things or new ideas, which inclusion is not a new thing, but we have been so desensitized. I don't know. We're just so used to having that medical model of therapies delivered that I think we lost sight of what we really want children to do when that's the way that we look at therapies for children. We have lost sight that we want them to be functional students in a classroom and just not performers in an isolated setting. And so I really appreciate your openness to jumping in that inclusion bandwagon with us. Amanda says, I realize that the IEP writing is more involved than I could imagine. And also it makes me realize how little involvement you've had so far. And that breaks my heart.
Well, and know that they are hesitant because they realize that's your domain. You know, that classroom is your kingdom. And so it's like coming into someone else's house. And then, you know, sometimes they're nervous. So let them know you want to work with them, that you're willing to be a part, because a lot of the time they feel like maybe they're seen as invasive when they're reaching out to you rather than there to truly assist, because their job is not to come in, their purpose is not to come in and critique you, but to really look at how that child is performing within your setting and how can they help you. That's their goal. So no, if you don't have, reach out to them, let them know,
Yes.
hey, I would love to work with you on this. I would love to give input, because sometimes they're nervous, just like anybody coming into a strange place. And their goal truly is to help you better your children and make them much more successful with what you're doing.
Most definitely. Y'all, this is a short video. It is about a little boy whose name is Drew, and he has a vision. And I just feel like that this is why we do it. And I'm going to show it real quick, and then we will be finished.
Elisa, have you shared sound?
Thought I did. Let me go. Hang on. Let me stop it. Let me see. I sure did think I did, but let's make sure.
I just haven't heard anything yet. I didn't know if it was just me.
Okay, listen right now if you're hearing something now, because it's a long time before you hear anything. Can you hear that?
No.
No. Okay, well, we may not be able to because
Go to. Hold on. Give me a minute.
my gosh, y'all, this is the way I roll. I don't know why Danita hadn't put me out in the parking lot yet.
Okay, go to there and you're going to share sound wherever that is.
There it is right there. Okay. All right, there we go.
Drew has helped me grow as a teacher and even as a human being. Open your doors, open your hearts, open your arms, because they not only learn from you, but they teach you as well.
Inclusion is the way to go. I mean, it's not just a requirement, it's just the right thing to do. It benefits the kids with disabilities, it benefits the kids without disabilities, it benefits the staff, it benefits everybody who's involved in the process.
I'd like to see him get a good education in school and be what he wants to be.
He goes to a public school now where he gets those services, but he was in transition for about a year where they would just come and observe him and say, well, what do you think? And it was kind of frustrating for us for a while because we felt he was supposed to be getting the service and they just had him in lieu of this transition. So that's why we decided that we didn't want home base anymore. We wanted to go to the public schools. That's pretty new to us, but it seems to be working well. He seems to be doing pretty well there.
I had to look at a lot of safety things, a lot of just overall support for the family and for Drew, and a lot of apprehension at times from both staff and parents. But we went with the role that, you know, peers are powerful, and it didn't take him long. He was up walking, picking up on skills, learning to interact with the other kids. He made beautiful gains in that classroom.
We've had wonderful support from the public schools. I think communication is the biggest thing that works, and being able to pull those pieces together. They were able to actually put together an interagency agreement between Lincoln Public Schools as the special ed provider, services coordination, and Early Head Start. And we've been able to expand that in the last 2 years to have birth to 5 language. So it includes the entire process.
The service coordinators from the health department felt comfortable in calling up the Lincoln Public Schools evaluation team to say, I think we have a student that you need to look at. Teachers that I worked with within the public schools became aware of the program. And then we were also able to work with the child care providers a lot to be much more comfortable in taking students with disabilities. Just a lot of word of mouth and every day going out there and do what you can is how I think was the real success. Over that first year, we had so many successes to see in Drew's development. We made a believer out of them.
That idea, if he were around peers, same age peers, you know, there really could be some great progress, just was incredible. I had seen Drew, you know, within the first week that he came in, hadn't been out to his classroom again for probably a month or two, and was just astounded by the difference of, you know, his physical, his, you know, his speaking, just everything. Just was amazed at the progress that he made and how quickly that he did that.
One of our state administrators here in Nebraska described it really well for me. He talked about a stool having 3 legs, and one leg are the government folks. The second leg are the providers of services. And the third leg has to be the families. And without bringing all three of those perspectives together, the stool won't stand. It'll fall over.
My parenting background was that you can do anything you want if you try hard enough, and I hope that we can instill that, and I hope that it's the case. You know, if we'd say that to him, I think if you've got the will and the drive, you can do whatever you want.
So that is why we do it. I really and truly, every time I've watched that video, I get weepy at the beginning because you know what? Every day, families bring us the best that they have, and that's their children. And we have a responsibility to love them and to support them and to give them the best opportunity for a successful life that we can. Feel free to email me if you've got any questions, and I should have all of your PDR updated by tomorrow afternoon. Is there anything before we go? Well, I've got you over 3 minutes, so I'm going to let you go. You guys have a most wonderful rest of the day, and thank you for joining us. Bye, everybody.